Dawnbreaker is back in this next season of The War Within. 1 minute boss guides for Dawnbreaker, let's go. Shadowcrown is a one phase encounter with a 50% intermission. Starting off, the boss will cast Shadow Bolt. Just interrupt this whenever you can. Tanks, you'll need to be ready for the Obsidian Beam cast. This deals a massive amount of damage to the primary target and will spawn 3 rotating beams afterwards. For obvious reasons, you're going to want to avoid getting hit by this channel. The boss will then target 2 non-tank players with Collapsing Night. This will open 2 shadow rifts beneath their feet that will grow in size over a short period of time after spawning. Bait these the best you can, but tanks, you should aim to move the boss away, giving your party plenty of space to work with. Finally, the boss will debuff a player with a nasty dot called Burning Shadows. This is going to need to be dispelled immediately. Once it is dispelled, the remaining party members will be left with a damage over time effect. Healers will want to be prepared to counter this damage, but DPS can help out by using a defensive. Once the boss reaches 50% health, she will teleport to the center of the boat, attempting to consume the entire ship in darkness. At this point, players should mount up and fly away. Make sure you get far enough away where you don't get hit by this orb. Any player struck will most likely perish. Once this cast ends, the fight will continue, with one little added twist. The Obsidian Beam will now have 4 beams instead of 3, but the rest is business per usual. Once Shadowcrown is brought to 1 health, she will once again attempt to bring down the ship by sacrificing herself. This is when players can mount up and once again head towards the next area. Anub'ikkaj is easily the hardest encounter in this dungeon. You have been introduced to most of their mechanics already by defeating the required mini-bosses. Starting off, tanks are going to want to be aware of the terrifying slam cast. Move away from the boss slightly and be prepared for the large hit. You're going to want to use the defensive and be ready to counter the knockback with any ability you can. Next, we have Dark Orb, which will send an orb towards a player. Any player caught in this circle will take a stacking damage over time effect that can be lethal if it gets too high. This orb will also explode once it connects with any terrain or reaches a maximum distance. Since this deals drop-off damage, it's important to make sure you send it as far as possible. It's a common strategy to tank the boss around this location, sending it down the western path. The boss will then cast Animate Shadows, which will spawn multiple congealed darknesses that will need to be not only killed, but also need to be interrupted or crowd controlled. The final mechanic is Shadow Decay, which will deal pulsing group damage that does more damage with each subsequent hit. Healers will need to be prepared for this, but DPS and tanks alike should be using group cooldowns, defensives, and any other tools to stay alive through this heavy onslaught of damage, especially when it overlaps with ad casts or the Dark Orb expiring. These mechanics repeat over and over with slightly different sequencing, so buckle down and with the right execution, Anub'ikkaj will fall. Once again, we're face to face with Queen Ansrek's loyal pet. Not much has changed since we last faced off against Rasha'nan. In Phase 1, the name of the game is to bring Rasha'nan to a certain health threshold in order to enter Phase 2. The easiest way to do this is by utilizing the Arathi bombs that will periodically spawn on the ship. They do spawn all over, so ideally mobile classes or range players should do what they can to pick these up and toss them at the boss. The Phase 1 mechanics besides the Arathi bombs are quite easy. First, you're going to want to dodge the swirls from the Expel Webs cast. Healers will want to prepare for the Erosive Spray cast, as this does heavy group damage over its duration. Lastly, players targeted by Rolling Acid will want to move to either side the wave is on, making sure it doesn't hit your group. Once the boss reaches 64%, Rasha'nan will attempt to escape. At this point, you're going to want to mount up and chase the boss. Players can take a shortcut by beelining it to the next encounter area. In Phase 2, it's the player's goal to bring the boss down to 60%. Most of the mechanics will remain the same, including dodging swirls and bringing the wave to the correct side. The only new mechanic is Spinneret's Strands. This will target 2 players with giant circles. Bring these away from the boss before they expire, then you'll need to get out of the webs as fast as possible. Once you do so, it'll sever the thread, dealing group damage. Phase 2 is fairly healer intensive between Spinneret's Strands and Erosive Spray, so players should do what they can to mitigate the damage. And that's it. Congratulations on making it through the Dawnbreaker. Best of luck this season, and I'll catch you all in the next one. Peace.